Now is the time to have a panel discussion. So I will invite Frank, Erick, and Libby. Libby will be moderating this session. Yeah, there's one. And also Eddie from Vitapro. Sorry, I forgot that.
Thank you very much to our speakers this morning. I found that really informative. I don't know about you, we've been talking about traceability, and the blockchain buzzword has been bandied around for absolutely years, but I think to have it broken down into what it really means, I loved Frank's description in terms of GDST. It kind of demystifies it. And it was obviously really clear, I hope to you as well, that this is things that people are doing anyway, but perhaps don't realize that they're providing that information, or that information is there. So I think what we want to do this morning is just dig a little bit deeper into the work of GDST, and also the pilots that have been happening with Vitapro and Centinela, and then we'll have we'll open the floor to questions as well. So I was really interested, Erick, you were saying about you were actually doing lots of this anyway. And it's probably maybe a question for Vitapro as well, that you were doing it, but has there been, in terms of formalizing it more and making sure that you are compliant with GDST, has there been any cost in terms of capital cost or time or expertise? What has been the investment from the company?
Well, I think that is a very tricky question, because it will depend on the level of or the extent of your traceability system, the data that you are already collecting, and the format that you are adopting to try to get to a fully interoperable traceability platform. I think the first thing that we or any fishing company have to do is this kind of assessment to evaluate the current state of their traceability system. We are still working in implement the GDST standard, but I think the cost, or the higher costs are the interfaces of our systems and the change that we have to do. But I cannot tell you how much, or
I'm not really looking for monetary terms, but I suppose you've had to have some sort of investment. But do you feel that's been a worthwhile investment? Obviously, you have had to do some things, but as a company, are the returns worth that investment? I don't need you to tell me how many dollars or whatever. We're not that. It's just overall, is it expensive for a company to do, or have you found that you had those systems in place? It's a bit of fine tuning, and actually the return on that investment in time, expertise, not necessarily financial, but obviously there will be some of that in there. Has that return been worth it in terms of your operation and the assurances that you can now give?
Of course, is worthy. I think that you don't need too much resources for the stage we are. We just need the time of the people to evaluate the feasibilities to apply for a future blockchain or any platform of traceability. That's what I think.
So Eddie, have you got something to add from a feed perspective?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we believe in the traceability and innovation in general is really important for us as a sustainability strategy in Vitapro. And as mentioned also Erick and Frank, it's important to make the first step, right? And this kind of project is relevant for us because it's our first step in this new era of smarter food food safety, as mentioned, as called FDA, for example, recently, right? And there is no such expensive at this early stage because we have a lot of resources and information. We have a strong traceability scheme put in place in the company, and also we try to collaborate, for example, with Centinela and also different kind of suppliers to work together to make more stronger this kind of traceability scheme. And I'm pretty sure everybody can join us in this first stage to work through this kind of project, for example, through GDST standard. But also it's important to mention that if we want to go through or advance in this kind of project, we will need more invest. And funding is a key word, I think so, because we will need more involved for another stakeholders like the Ministry of Production, for example, and the sanitary authority, for example. And this kind of work to scale up this kind of project will be necessary. I think that the next step, we will need more invest in this kind of methodologies. I'm pretty sure the market in general will be prepared to this kind of investments.
And this is probably a question for you as well, Frank, for all of you. Where do you see some of this funding coming from? Do you think it is just up to the private sector, or do you think there's leverage perhaps from GDST in terms of trying to raise awareness of what's happening? Is there potential out there in terms of funding?
Actually, I think there's a lot. So if you look at some of the new proposed EU regulations, they're talking about subsidizes from governments to help launch this, seed capital to get more people involved. Just looking at Peru, it was about a month ago that TRASOP received, and WWF Peru and TRASOP received funding from the United Nations to expand the list of species that are on the system. So originally it was done with the pota and it was done with the mahi, and now it's been given granted funding to expand to every single one of marine ingredients that are produced in Peru. And we see some other foundations that have now offered funding down to Chile to expand that as well, and to move e-logbook and digital traceability not only in alignment with GDST, but also to move it into the artisanal fleets. So there are funding, but it's really important though that we speak with one voice and we ask one message, right? Because if a whole bunch of different people are saying, we need this, we need that, we need this, but if we come together and we speak with a voice, I think that volume will be heard.
Okay, thank you. So on that theme, how important is marine ingredients? A lot of focus globally when you talk about seafood supply chains, it's always about direct human consumption fisheries. And in this little corner of the world and other parts of the world, but we're all here today. Marine ingredients is king, but it's often forgotten, or people just don't even know it exists. They'll talk about the fishery, they'll talk about the processing, they'll talk about someone going into their retailer to buy a piece of fish to have for their dinner. How important is marine ingredients within GDST? Is it something that is clearly there on the radar? I know from a MarinTrust perspective, we have we're part of GDST, but how can GDST, how important is marine ingredients, and how can we raise the profile of marine ingredients in that?
No, it's absolutely critical, and certainly an area of focus. We look at our global food supply and the protein supply for the planet, and in order to sustain it, it has to come from aquaculture. So what more of a powerful message can you bring to the table when we speak to with one voice to say, well, if you really want to sustain the planet, you might want to listen to this sector, right? And GDST, I mean, the work that's being done right now in MarinTrust, and you know, a subset of, they're not all applicable, the GDST KDEs. They're not applicable to everybody, right? But the subset that has been chosen falls within and is umbrellaed by what GDST is doing. So we're really the same voice, right?
Okay, thank you. In terms of, so going back to Vitapro and Centinela, how do you develop that trust in terms of, obviously there's data sharing going on. How has that trust been developed, and how do you, from a Vitapro perspective, obviously Centinela is only one of your suppliers, so how do you replicate that with all of your suppliers, and how do you develop that level of trust?
Yeah, thank you. Well, with Centinela was very, I don't know, easy, but was totally feasible because we are part of a group, economic group, and that helped us to work together with a main goal in mind, and that's why also when we have the first kickoff meeting with Erick, also with Francisco and also Javier, we have clear vision of what we're working for, and that's with that starting point was very easy or feasible to explain to our teams and work together through this project, and that we believe this is the formula to work with another stakeholders. As a feed producer, we are in the middle of the value chain because we bought for use fish meal, fish oil, and another kind of ingredients to produce a sustainable feed for the shrimp industry in Latin America. And we want to have the goal in mind, the sustainability as a framework for as a main purpose for us and as for all the value chain in Latin America. And with that in mind, we believe this will be very feasible to work and be confident to share information and share resource to get the target.
Okay, thank you. So are you looking for other, and this might be a question for Francisco actually, in terms of other companies joining this project, how do you see that going? Is that a role for MarinTrust, or is that something that, you know, now the train has left the station, now industry's doing this, is that now to be left to industry?
Well, actually, it's everybody's role. Everybody has a part on this to work towards the common objective, because everybody's interlinked. So everybody has to do their role. MarinTrust will help to ascertain also who has to do what in that role, in order to make sure that the industry have the right understanding, awareness, that this is important for resilience to the company. To also, it is important for the marine ingredients as an industry, because we are competing also, fish meal and fish oil are competing with other ingredients, soy, other oils, canola oil, and many other ingredients. And this is the point in which marine ingredients should be, become the leaders in traceability amongst all these different, ingredients that goes into aquafeed. So it is basically, everybody has a part on it. MarinTrust will be there behind, trying to, doing the support with regards to information, creating the awareness, empowering them. We want to empower sites, marine ingredient sites, to have this objective in mind to achieve this full traceability as the market expects.
Thanks, Francisco. And in terms of MarinTrust being the center of excellence for traceability within marine ingredients, what else are you envisaging in the vision, achieving this vision for MarinTrust? How do you see that being taken forward by MarinTrust beyond this pilot?
Well, it is really to become the the center of, of information. So it's not only beyond this pilot, we need to go for, further, because these are pilots that have been within a country. We need to now go abroad. We need to go one country to another one. We need to do more pilots. We need to gather more information to be able to provide that information to everybody that needs to use it correctly. The aim is that MarinTrust, after these pilots and everything, we will try to increase more the pool, to bring more industries involved, because this is, we're talking about aquaculture, but there's also the human consumption side of things. There's also cosmetics, pet food manufacturing, and everything. So it is a huge part that we want to involve everybody in there. So the next steps will be to, call out for more people that wants to participate in this, to make everybody's a common objective.
Thanks, Francisco. And Frank, in your talk, I think it was great because you really demystified a lot of traceability and all the lingo. And we still hear about blockchain all the time, as you've got to have blockchain. And as we ascertained in the supply chains we work from, you may get someone with a sophisticated system, you might get someone writing on paper. In terms of GDST activity globally, how we obviously would like to clone you and have that speech at lots of events. What are the plans for GDST in terms of growing the number of people that are saying, actually, GDST version 1, this is where we have to be?
Wow, that's a big question. So GDST is now migrated into its own entity. It is no longer co-convened by WWF and IFT. It is a separate entity owned by a Stichting in Denmark and a LLC in Singapore. We have been developing more products that will help initiate traceability globally. We are looking at cloning and reskinning applications or systems that we can make available in a wide variety of languages to really make something very turnkey for somebody who wants to come along. So if we know that Trazop, for example, works, and Trazop works in Peru, why can't a clone of Trazop work in Ecuador? Or why can't a clone of Trazop work in Southeast Asia or in Norway or in Germany or in South Africa or wherever it's needed, right? If we enable the languages, right, we advance the needs of the specific industries, we can move that forward. We're now testing systems against the standards. Next, we'll be testing supply chains against the standards. And then after that, we'll be going down to the brands. And so at any level, to mitigate risk or to give assurance on what, for example, a farm would be asking for in their marine ingredient product, it would automatically audit that supply chain, the GDST systems, and it would send that assurance. And I wanted to talk about blockchain 1 second because it is that buzzword out there, right? Blockchain's an architecture. It's a secure way to store data. It doesn't do anything else. Whether you have a repository or you have it on your phone or you have it in your database or if you have it in the cloud, right? Those are all data repositories. Blockchain is just a data repository that needs a key to access it. And so the data, once inside a blockchain, cannot be manipulated and it's secure. It's a great architecture for data, but it doesn't do anything more for traceability than anything else. It's just a place to store it.
Thanks very much. We've got time for questions from the floor. If you have got a question, please put your hand up. And what would be really helpful is you can say your name clearly and which company you are from. So have we got a roving mic or do we need this one?
Yeah, it's Jon Talebø from 999 Denmark, and we are a fish meal, fish oil producer. And the industry in Europe, we are operating sustainably, and we want to be able to demonstrate that. But listening to this discussion, for me, GDST is selling a product. You are no longer a ideal organization. You are selling us a product, and MarinTrust is selling us a product. And it sounds to me that it's the same product, because it's doing the same. So our frustration is often that there are so many selling us this product. We want ideally to have one product that we can go out to our customers and say, yes, this is a product delivering the data you are asking for, and it's delivering it to all our different customers. So that half of them is not asking for DGST and the other half is asking for MarinTrust, and there's a difference. Because then we have to develop the whole job twice. And that is actually, I think, what I don't quite understand in this discussion. Are MarinTrust adopting the system from GDST so that you are fully acknowledging the two different, like MSC and MarinTrust is doing on the raw material, or are you competitors?
Okay. Well, first of all, this is not a product. What we're trying to tell you is that we are trying to work to standardize the wording, the systems, what it is that is basic for traceability system to work across countries. You know, not only within one country. So this is about discussion about what it is that the data needs to be. So how do you input the data? Who inputs that data? So this is information. It's not a specific product. Now we are not competitors because we have, and all the standards around will have an element of GDST in it because we all look at traceability. So yeah, so I mean, we are not competitors as to one. I don't think this is a product because we're trying to provide information that you need to be able to have a standardized platform for traceability to happen across all different sectors. Because at the moment in Norway you may have a system, but then in another place we'll have a different system, and the connection with it will be via Excel, for example. None of those systems will talk to each other. So what we're trying to do is that those systems will talk to each other because all of you have a common language that will go through. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, maybe just a bit. So we certainly support, so like I said, business smart decisions, right? The GDST has laid out through industry, because those were all industry decisions on what was captured. GDST will and always will remain a standard. That standard conversation, how it expands is dictated by you, by the industry, right? If the industry comes together and says that there needs to be a separate KDE list for marine ingredients under the GDST banner because we have a limited KDE set, well, by all means, we should have that conversation. And that's what GDST does. It convenes the conversations to create the standard based on what industry needs and what industry asks for. And
just another thing, because you just got me started. So, fine. But the second challenge we have in Europe is because in Peru the example is very easy. One species. In Europe, we will have bycatch, which we, for example, in Denmark we put data on down to 0.0 something on bycatch. If there is one cod in a sand eel, we have to recognize it. So that is adding to complexity. In our factory in Denmark, we receive 23 different byproducts species. That is adding to complexity. So what I think is very important for all the standard is that you should try not to make it too complicated when you look at these complex these complex routes, because then it becomes very challenging actually to fulfill any of it. So that's one thing. And the other thing, that what you said, Frank, I think was very good. Who is going to bring part of this information? It will have to be on the byproducts. A certain part of the responsibility will have to be on the people receiving the whole fish, delivering the byproducts to us. So they must also be on board and accepting their role.
Yeah, I just forgot the first one.
Did you want to?
Oh yes. So with regards to the complexities, that you mentioned, one of the things is that's what we're working. We are consulting with all these stakeholders to try to understand, and that's why we put this sourcing of it, because it is important. Byproducts is such an important raw material, and we are going to continue consulting the value chain, specifically the fish processors. MarinTrust wants to get closer to fish processors in order to try to understand what they're doing, and also to help them understand that they have certain responsibilities within this, with this raw material. So we are going to continually do these consultations and everything, so then all of you guys will be able to help us. And that's why we have done pilots with you guys in the North Sea, and we will continue doing that because we want to maintain this relationship to grow,
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Anne Mette from Director of European Fish Meal, and it's a. Do I need to speak in this? I guess so. Yeah, it's a very interesting discussion. I just have one comment, and we also have a dialogue with you on this, but it's very important for us that the MarinTrust data is correctly at your website, and that you have a data system that is working. Because right now we see that there's some irregularities in the certificates we have and what we can find on the website. And I think this should be the first step for you, because we're looking for you to be the one collecting all this data. And as Jon was saying, we have very high complexity on the byproducts. So I think this should be the first step in this process.
Yeah, and we are actually working on it at the moment, because we are digitalizing all the systems within MarinTrust. We are finalizing our CRM, and then we are going to implement system in which the applicant will be able to look at everything, all the information that is needed, but also the applicant will have the responsibility to input all that information that is required for the certification process to happen. So yes, we are actually on the way, and we are going to finalize or launch, I think, the CRM within, that's internal. We are using it now, and we are just doing improvements for the second stage. So yes, we are on it, and we are. The timeline for the timeline for that will be, in January we will be able to have the CRM completed, and then after that we will have this application form being implemented. So let's say by Q2 of 2023 you will be able to operate a form in the website. Okay, so that is something that it's a bit of a it's a big process, because obviously in this type of systems, as you said, complexities in the fisheries, those complexities also needs to be understood and pass into this system. Yeah, so that's why it may take, it takes time to get all of this information. So yeah, by 2023 you will be able to have a platform as an applicant in which you will be able to put all that information. So the responsible will be the fish meal plant, will be put all that information.
Hi, morning everybody. Michiel Fransen from the ASC. So Frank, I heard you say that blockchain is a great tool to securely lock data, which is, I think, indeed the case. But then I also hear Francisco saying in his presentation that there's a concern on the integrity risk of the data being entered. How do we make sure that once the data is there, that we can trust the data?
Yeah, so that's the garbage in, garbage out theory, right? which is great. So actually, GDST is looking at the verifiability of the data. So first we have to get buy-in from industry to collect it, right? Once we have, when we looked at the KDE list, the list is much more than just a list of KDEs, right? It also deals with authoritative sources for data. For example, the authoritative source for the vessel license may not be the captain, right? It may be the government that issued that license as the authoritative source. Now you're talking about hundreds and thousands of APIs, right, in order to get that. And until we have a voice, so we're looking at how we do this at GDST, taking KDE by KDE, and then have to go region by region to enable this as a process to continually get better in the verifiability of the data. But the voice has to be strong enough to move the needle. And that's got to be the industry voice. So until the industry is all speaking with one voice and requiring this not only from their suppliers, but also giving it to their customers, when that one voice says, oh, by the way, government, you need to give us access into this to validate this information. When we can speak with such a strong voice, then that's when I think it tips the scales. But we are certainly on a process of moving in that direction.
Just compliment on this too also, one of the roles of MarinTrust will be in that part of educating, and creating awareness to all the fish meal plants and all, well, to all the MarinTrust sites and also stakeholders, is to also reduce the risk of putting wrong data, wrong information in there. Because when you create this awareness and everything, everybody knows what to do and everybody knows where to go, what information needs to be done, needs to be placed. And that aim that we have, that we want to make sure that marine ingredients are the leading, leaders in this industry, will help with that, because it's a creating of awareness. So if everybody knows what to do, then the risk of putting wrong data will be less. Now, if it's obviously intentional, that's a different thing.
Any more? We've got a question at the back. Sorry, Laura, making you run around.
Hi, Jay Lugar with the MSC, and good question, Mikel. I was going to ask the integrity question, but I'm more interested now, Francisco, and good to see you again, actually, been a few years, about whether you're planning to build traceability requirements into your chain of custody. And I ask that question because at the MSC, it's an active investigation around how much traceability should go into our chain of custody standard. I mean, it's already there on paper, but I'm talking about digital traceability, blockchain, or other industry-led initiatives, make sure that it's interoperable, for example. That's the key word I think I took out of today's discussion. And whether the standard itself needs to be a traceability standard rather than a chain of custody standard. So we're actively on that. So I'm interested in to see what your thoughts are.
Well, we have introduced these. Well, we have included these elements of. The chain of custody is a traceability standard by itself. So within there, we have included elements of digital traceability or innovative traceability. We are not at this point in time. We are not putting anything about that. The system that has to be interoperable and stuff like that, because we're concentrating on the fundamental part. Because not everybody knows what a KDE is first. Nobody knows what a critical tracking event is. So the first part is to create that awareness, to make sure that everybody understands what it is. So then when it comes to phase of a request, a request from a buyer that they need to have that information and put it into a system, they will be able to have the basic information. So at this point in time, we are focusing on what it is, the basic that it needs to have, and then with consequent standards, we will be able to increase if needed too. Because if we are concentrating only on objective, which is IUU, we will just look at the main specific key data elements or that needs to be recorded by the fish meal plant.
Thank you. We've got probably time for another 1 or 2 questions. Anyone else in the audience would like to ask something of our panelists? Fantastic. Right, we do have a short break now for tea and coffee. And if everyone could come back in the room at 11:05, and then we'll be running the second session. Before you go, I want to thank our speakers today. I thought it was very informative, and thank you to them, particularly those having to speak in a non-native tongue. Congratulations, and thank you very much.